Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Connecting B2C with your host Bennett Clark and Alex Acuff, where we like to skip over the A and really get to the connecting points, the B and C, and really get to the meat and potatoes so we can really offer you guys some value. Today we are super excited for our guest. He's an author, speaker, coach, Inman contributor, Dan Smith here on the line. So Dan Smith, say hello to everybody. Introduce yourself a little bit more than me.
Hello, everybody. How are you doing? Let's see. What am I? I am an author. I am a speaker. I'm a strategist. I am a fantastic dad. I am a pretty good husband, and I am a fair to middling strategist to help you in your business. How's that? I keep busy. I keep busy with a variety of things in my life these days.
Nice. Well, just for all our guests and audience here, Dan and Alex and I all met in New York City at the Inman conference here in 2018 in January. One of the things that really got my attention was how Dan used the Inman app, and I was following different people and what they were doing. And if there was an award for the person who was the most active or most engaging, it was by far Dan Smith.
I tried to do that.
So
yeah.
I was just like, who is this guy? I got to meet him. I think pretty early on I reached out to you. I was pretty active on it too. And I think that we just kind of naturally hit it off. But so that kind of leads into the first thing I want to get from you is when you go to these things, what are the engaging aspects of it? Is it because you're taking a different approach as an author? You know, I thought your content was almost like a reporter. If there's something going on at Inman, Dan knows about it. If there was something intriguing, Dan took a picture of it and posted it. And I was like, this guy must be tired because it's like boom, 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 boom. It was super engaging. You caught my attention. And but the second point to this really is as big and broad and outreaching as he was. Where we really connected is we were looking for some small groups for luncheons and stuff like that. And he and I and two others got together and did a small get together there at the Marriott and just had lunch. And at that point, we dove in a little bit deeper on some of the things that we connected with. So Dan, just jump right in and just let me know what it is about conferences, about connecting and how you go about connecting and what you get out of these things.
So I go to conferences actually for a variety of reasons. So my wife is a broker, right? So she's a broker owner, has her own team, ownership of a company. And so I go, one, as somebody in the industry to also get ideas, just like normal agents do, right? Like what are the cool new tips and tricks and what's going on that we want to know about? So that's one reason I go. And then the second reason I go is for my own business, right? Because I don't sell real estate anymore. I gave up my license so I could be paid by like people that the states don't let you be paid by, banks and title companies and such, right? Because of conflict of interest. I gave up my license. My wife sells. I sold my company in 2006. And so I'm not licensed, but I still go because as a speaker, as an author, as a strategist for companies and brokerages, it's a great place for me to make a connection with these other companies, brokerages, agents to talk about maybe helping their business. So I go for really two different reasons, right? And then the Inman app was like a godsend because I wasn't necessarily, I didn't have like a cool booth like my buddy Joe Rand had a booth for his book, right? For the disruptors, discounters, and doubters. Like he had a booth to sell his book. I was so jealous. I didn't have a booth to sell my book, right? And I didn't have a booth in Startup Alley or up in Vendor Row. And so it was a good way for me to get like name recognition because people are seeing me so often. So long as I could bring something fun and some content, some value, as oh, I didn't know about this or I didn't know about that. So I was trying to throw out ideas like, hey, make sure you go see this. And we went to this restaurant. Make sure you go there. And I tried to be in all places at once. I really did. And I was on the go. And for me, it was a provide value so that I can make some more connections. And as a kind of invaluable tool, I had people coming up to me in elevators or just saying, you're that guy. You're Dan Smith, right? I've been watching you for 4 days on the app. And they were long days.
I just gravitated.
They were super long days, because I was on West Coast time as well. And so I was, but I had some work to do. So I was waking up at like 5 East Coast time, which is 2 West Coast time. so I could get some work done before I went into sessions at like 8. You know, I started early because I had CEO Connect that first day before everybody else got started. And then we would go to sessions all day. And then we'd hang out in cocktail hour for like an hour and a half, still networking, right? And then we'd go to dinner for like an hour and a half. And then every single night, I was trying to make sure I was at whatever party was going off, that I had an invitation to go to that party. So I was sharing, you know, the Boomtown and the Zillow and the Better Homes and Gardens. Your birthday, the birthday bowling party. We went to the birthday bowling party. And so every night I was going to bed at about 2. Right. And all through, I was like, okay, I got to post, keep everybody informed, continue the barrage, the blitz attack of name recognition. Right. But it afforded me 20, 30, 40, 50 people a day coming up and introducing themselves that I could really try to make that connection. And I'd go on about 3 hours sleep, and then I'd do it again the next day because I was up again at 5. So it was a very tiring week, but it was great because I met more people than I'd ever met at a convention before.
Wow. So kind of digging in a little bit, one thing the Inman thing I think is awesome. You know, I learned so many invaluable ways to go about networking and really building relationships and referral partners. And, you know, watching you was fantastic. So, you know, kudos to you. I appreciate you because you don't realize how much people are actually learning just by watching you move. So, awesome time. But what I really kind of want to dig on what you said is that you sold your company in 06, and you know, at that time you're just right on the bubble there, like you're getting close. And you know, as you transition into this this role of being an author, a mentor, you know, what really sparked it in 06 for you to make that jump, and then moving into when the market crashed? How did you feel like everyone responded, and how were you able to guide your clients through those times?
So I was incredibly lucky. Like, I wasn't Nostradamus. I did not see the crash, the bubble bursting, the crash coming. I had some personal stuff going on in my life that would just, the opportunity came along to sell my company. And in 2006, my last year of actual full-time selling, I had 321 closed sides. That was me, not a team. Right? If you take my team up, we're close to 700. So just myself, as I was on burnout row, man. Like, you just imagine burnout, multiply it by 10, and then there's half of what I was. So I needed a break.
It's a deal a day.
Yeah. Well, not quite, because you work 367 days a year to do that kind of volume, right? But pretty close.
I better step my game up.
I know, right? I feel like shit right now.
I need like a Harry Potter, like one of those time turner dealy bobbies, right? So I had an opportunity to sell my company. A major brand wanted to come into my market. They didn't have a presence. And they're like, do you want to partner? And I was like, no, just get me the fuck out, please. Right? So I got to get out and just sell them the company instead of like partnering up. And I took a couple years off and continued my personal meltdown, going through all that, trying to rediscover myself and what I was going to do, and becoming a better dad and stuff. And I continued to melt down a little bit in life. And then 2009 rolled around, and I had some friends who were like, man, we're really struggling. Can you help us? Can you coach? I don't like the word coach, because here's the deal. The coach tells you what to do, and then you don't do it. Like in real sports, the coach tells you what to do and you do it. But in real estate, a coach tells you what to do and you don't do it. And then week after week, all you do is talk about the things you don't want to do. And it's kind of pointless, right? So I said, I'm not going to coach you, but I'll start strategizing with you. Let's figure out what you're good at. I'm not just going to tell you go door knock and cold call. Pretty much know that you should do those things. And if you don't want to do it, that's cool. Let's figure out something else you want to do. So I wanted to come at it from a strategy standpoint. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Let's accentuate your strengths. Let's decrease your weaknesses. And let's build your business with that kind of a game plan and strategy, not just your normal 25-minute bullshit coaching call. And so that's how I built up my clients. And my clients started coming to me, and they're like, can you help us out? You're not really doing anything, because I wasn't. And so I started like helping one client and then another client. Pretty soon I was like, I should probably start charging for this. Like, this is something that I can do as like a business, I think. And that took a year or so to maybe even 2 years, from 2009 to 2011, before I developed it into an actual business that, I think I'm going to do this, and I'm going to start speaking, and I'm going to start writing in it. But it kind of evolved organically in just helping a group of people that I knew who needed help, because the market was so bad. in '09. And so they kind of leaned to me for help. And I thought, okay, but we're going to do it a different way. Strategy, not coaching. So that's kind of how it came about.
Yeah.
So kind of between, as far as your, building strategy, what have you felt like, really since, I'd say since '06, since when you were booming and running and gun, what's probably one of the biggest new strategies, since then from 2006 to 2018?
If one of the examples I give, and I happen to be talking on mine right now, so I can't hold it up, but I'd say go back to 2006 and hold your phone up. Right? Just imagine, go back to the future. Go back to 2006 and hold your phone up in front of you right now. What does it look like? More than likely, it flips.
Yeah.
Right? More than likely, it flips.
I was looking
Pretty sure mine was a Nextel.
It might have a little wheel on the side, the old school Blackberries. It potentially has a stylus that never actually hits the spot that you're trying to hit, right? The old Trias.
I think I had the first Nokia that was like, what?
Technology has come so far since '06. And, this internet thing, it's not a fad, as it turns out. And so really the major strategies now are, it's still face-to-face, belly-to-belly, personal contact. That's how you're going to make $1 million. That's how you're going to have success. That's how you're going to build up a clientele. That's how you're going to capture the business, keep the business, right? Is still that personal who you are. But technology makes it easier to start those relationships, for you to find those people to then go out and have that belly-to-belly, face-to-face with. There's ways to buy leads now that didn't exist before. Now, if you're just buying leads and hoping that life is going to be easy and you're going to give them to a buyer's agent and you're going to sit back and make a ton of money, you're going to go broke, because those leads are not that good. Those leads still need to be nurtured, brought along, followed up with, right? But
notes, tracking,
skills will never go out of style, right? Skills will never go out of style. You're still going to have sales skills. You're going to still have to have systems for following up with people. But technology has made it easier yet harder at the same. It's never been easier and never been harder to get business if you're fighting both avenues, right? If you're like,
does the technology aspect level the playing field for some people who might not be?
It does. Because check this out.
So it makes our market more competitive.
Nothing against Redfin. Okay, a little bit against Redfin, but average agent did 34 transactions last year. Now, not for nothing, and I don't know about the whole market, right? But I can tell you, in the marketplace that I live in, Redfin agents can't close a box. Forget closing a sale. All right? That's just how it is. But maybe they're better in other markets. I get it. But a 34 per person average, right, is telling you something. And it's telling you that they're getting it. Somebody said this to me, and they're right. You got to be likable, you got to be knowledgeable, and you got to be accessible. You got to be at least two of those three. And if you're all three, you're the perfect candidate. And in my particular market, Redfin's not real knowledgeable. But you know what they are? Super accessible. And their accessibility, I think, has leveled the playing field, because they get the leads from the technology. And because they're super accessible, maybe lacking in skill, right? They're able to perform at a very high level. So it has leveled the field in a certain degree. Now, most of us don't have $400 million in tech support sitting out there, so we can't rely on that. But we can still utilize tech a lot better to level the field with some of those big players, because they're so big, they can't adjust, they can't pivot. When the market starts to do something, an opportunity presents itself, they can't pivot with the market. Like there's this 800-pound gorilla, and we can be like nimble and quick on our feet with technology. So I think it has leveled the field some.
Nice. Yeah, that's pretty unique. And I think I can speak for Bennett too. In our markets, we actually don't have Redfin yet. So all I know is redfin.com. So I do not want to
Inman's been telling me for a couple of years about Redfin, but I haven't experienced it in the local.
Hey, and don't get me wrong, they're getting better and better, and they're figuring it out. 13 years in, they've definitely started to figure it out. And Wall Street's thrown a couple $100 million at them to figure it out now. And they have some faith in them. But historically, in this particular market, they were really bad. They're getting better, but the average agent who's out there hustling with a high skill level could still crush them if they were more accessible, right? They're already likable. They're already knowledgeable.
If they improve one of the other two things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, that kind of leads into a little bit of a shift here. What about the balance between building this career and being super busy, balancing with your life, balancing the aspects that are the most important things to us as individuals. Because we can't just go, 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 go. You're going to drive yourself into the ground. You got to have a balance. What do you say to that?
Well, you do, and I'm a professional unbalanced person, as it turns out. So I figured out on both sides of the coin what unbalance looks like before I finally was able to find that balance, right? So I figured out the all work, no life side, completely unbalanced on one side of the coin. So then, because I'm a person who deals in extremes, apparently, that's what my therapist says. Then apparently, I fired her. She doesn't know anything. Then I went to the other side and I did no work. I'm like, I'm just not going to work anymore. I'm just going to not work. I'm going to retire. How old was I? Like
Sabbatical.
36. Like 36 years old. I'm going to sell my company. I'm going to retire and I'm just going to be the dad now. It's also no balance, by the way. There's no business side of your life now, right? So completely unbalanced. I just swung 180 degrees in the other direction. As it turns out, you got to have some of each. Took a little while to learn that lesson. A couple $1 million probably wasted and gone until I finally figured it out.
How do people get to that point? Is it just an individual thing that's like, boom, it comes to you? Or are there things that people can put into practice to help them achieve those?
First of all, it's trial and error, and you got to make mistakes. You got to eat crow. You got to realize that you failed. You didn't work. There's no way to find balance. You're never just going to go like when you go stand on a teeter-totter. You don't just like perfectly stand on the teeter-totter, right? And there you are. You got the Olympics are going on right now, right? I'm not sure when it will air, but the Olympics are going on. I guarantee you, those Olympians doing some of those tricks on the snowboards that I was watching last night, right? The first time they stood on a snowboard, they didn't just like start doing those tricks. They were falling on their butts and left and right and catching edges.
Their wrists were broken. Oh,
right,
my goodness.
Exactly. So they have
snowboarding.
Balance on a snowboard, balance on a teeter-totter. It takes a while to figure out where to stand. It takes a while to figure out how to shift your weight. And the only way to do it is to fall off the teeter-totter, to fall off the snowboard. The only way to do it in life is to fail at a little bit of business, to fail at a little bit of life. But the thing is, you got to be cognizant of what's going on, learn from your mistakes, make an adjustment, not swing 180 degrees like Dan did. Make a minor tweak adjustment and see if that's balanced now until you finally find that point that's right for you. And that point that's right for you, guess what? It's not going to be right for him, and it's not going to be right for her. It's only going to be right for you, but you've got to determine what that is.
Yeah. Share one thing just with everybody that I did that I was starting to get approached by my broker, my parents, just other people noticing, hey, you don't have much balance. You're working like 18 hours a day. And sometimes I still do that, but I love it. But one thing that I found when I really need to go to that balance thing, for me, it's golf. I'm a golfer. So what I do is I go to the office and I would work from, say, 8 to 12. I'd jump out of there. I play a quick round from 1 to 3 when everybody else in the world is working.
See, you're a good golfer.
But,
Yeah, no kidding.
here's the thing. You can skip around fast. No. Yeah. So I can skip around fast if there's nobody else playing. 2.5 hours, I'm back, I'm done. Then when does everybody want to meet to see houses? From like 4 to 8 or whatever. So that was my little balance thing. And we get so entrenched this 9 to 5. But when do realtors work? Or when do people in our markets work? It's not 9 to 5 by any means at all. And so many of those traditional job type things are going, out the window. A lot more people are working from home. A lot more people are working remotely or just out of a business office, out of the brick and mortar. So, being able to judge your individual needs, what it is that gets your mind off things or makes you think, perhaps, is really important to boosting your business, because otherwise I think you're going to just drive yourself into the ground, whether that's physically, whether that's emotionally, mentally, whatever. There's going to be some wall you hit that you've got to avoid or break through. So
yeah, completely. And it's different for everybody. You can't like read a book or take a webinar to figure out what it is. It's going to hurt, just so you know. There's a little bit of trial and error that's going to go on there, and it's going to hurt a little bit. But you know what? When you're growing muscles, when you're in the gym working out, you know why your muscles grow? Because they hurt. because you're working on them, because you're making progress. Progress doesn't happen without a little bit of pain, and you guys got to be expecting of that.
Yeah, that kind of speaks to I failed one good time before getting moving. Actually, I'd call it twice. So I failed with my first company and moved, and then moved areas, moved closer to home to be closer to family. And then, my second time was I thought I could work part-time in this gig and also work another job because like my dad's a builder, so I worked with him too. And what I found out is I actually did read a book. I read One Thing by Gary Keller, and I did one thing, and I got a coach, and he pushed me to the edge, and I told my wife that I was going to take it to the edge, and we're going to take this and we're going to run it out until I fall so hard that you're going to have to drag me back home. And I did that really hardcore, prospecting, cold calling, door knocking for a good solid year, and getting my teeth kicked in, and yeah, that really kind of launched my success. And, in 4 years, we've helped start a new company, got a team, we're growing, and I couldn't have been happier. My wife couldn't have been happier to see what's happening. And I think by her watching me take it to that limit, she helped me realize that I needed to go that far. And now that I've brought it back, because now we have a growing family, it's going to be even more important for me to really, leverage the people in our company and leverage our team.
Yeah, but so 3-4 years ago, you look back on it now, it doesn't seem a little painful, right? You can think about some stuff right? But when you're going through it, that shit just sucks. Like when you're going through it, that's there's nothing more painful than living.
You can't see your way out of the forest,
right? You can't see your way out. Exactly. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. But you just got to keep grinding. You got to keep pushing. You got to keep fighting, scratching, clawing, digging, right? Now, 4 years later, you look back at those times weren't so much fun, right? Because it kind of gets mellowed over time. Sure. But you got to go through that. That's how you succeed. You can't succeed without going through that.
Yeah, that's really the biggest advice I've ever given to a new agent if they ever ask me for it. It's just, be willing to fall on your face, take a leap of faith. If you screw up, who cares?
And then the follow-up question to that is somebody says, well, how do I do that? And I think the answer to that is just be yourself. Like, just do you, and the rest will take care of itself. You can motivate yourself. You can introduce the things that you're interested in, and people will naturally connect to you through those avenues. You don't need to take this shotgun approach.
Yeah.
We don't need to scatter.
But it's mental. How do you do it?
Oh,
you decide. It's all mental, right? You decide. And once you decide, then there's no more issue there. I've talked to a couple people in the last couple of days on a couple things on Facebook about this. Your goals, your dreams have to be bigger than your fear of the rejection and the failures you're going to run into along the way to achieving them. Right? If you're so concerned with your rejection and the fear, and that's what's stopping you, then your goals aren't big. Your goals have to be bigger for you to go through that. Like, oh, I'm going to go through it, but that's okay because my goals are that big. And as long as your goals are bigger than the fear, the rejection, the failures you're going to hit, that's how you succeed.
And I think that's a perfect lead into this guy.
Hey, that's a good book right there. That's a good book.
So tell me, why don't you just, all right, I'm going to go ahead and let you know, since you've given it to me, I have not read it yet, but it's right down my alley. I've already.
Because it's short? Is that it's down your alley because it's short?
No. I will give you an example. All right. So if I already know that once I read this, my follow-up book for people is going to be, go read The Obstacle is the Way. And what reminds me of it is your quotes here before each chapter from different folks here. The first one there's from Henry Ford. If you look at some of the people throughout history and how they've taken on tasks or obstacles in this, sense, they have a different mindset, or they are unafraid of this while the majority of people might be. So go into what this is about and tell us why you pushed the envelope, where you came from, what made you do this, and why it's such a important thing to you.
So it's a little autobiographical. As I began climbing out of my hole that I'd created for myself after the sale and some personal meltdowns and lack of balance on both sides, and starting to finally find a balance, and speaking, right? Because I'm speaking now. I was speaking well before I was authoring. People said, man, you should share that story more. You should write that story down because it's powerful and it resonates. And I thought I was the only one who was going through that. And that would have been so helpful for me to have like had a crutch to lean on or something. And so it's kind of an autobiographical book that takes you through the meltdown and then the dig out, and how failures are not a bad thing. A lot of stuff in there about how failures are not a bad thing. I tell people that I work with now, don't be afraid to fail. The smartest people in the room are the people who failed the most. We all know that. And so here's what I actually encourage. Don't go out there and fail slow, fail fast. Go out there and don't make 1 or 2 mistakes this week. How about 1 or 2 mistakes this hour? Because if you can make 100 mistakes in a week, you're going to be a lot smarter than if you make 100 mistakes in a year. You can get a year's worth of mistakes and learning and lessons and this and that and trial and error out of the way. So fail fast and fail greatly. Don't be afraid to fail, and understand that failure is a necessary ingredient to success. If you're not failing, you're not doing what's necessary to actually succeed. You're just going to be stuck. You're going to be flatlining, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about a heartbeat, it's got ups and downs, right? When a heartbeat's going like this on the monitor, what does that mean? You're dead.
It's not good,
right? You got to have some ups and downs, and you got some fail, great, fail, great. That's just how you succeed. If you're not failing, no matter what level you're at, you're never going to be succeeding either. And so the book is like kind of my story about what I went through personally, professionally, opportunities that were there that I missed, opportunities that were there that I grabbed a hold of, how one built on another, how other people, everything I talk about is how other people can then use those exact same things in their life. And there's goal setting in there, a lot of stuff about gratitude, a lot of stuff about understanding where you're at, and being a lot of stuff about graciousness. Because I was kind of like a pompous ass at one point in my life. And so it's a very autobiographical journey about how to fail, how to learn from it, how to use those failures to ultimately become a success. Yeah. Available on Amazon. That's what I hear.
Absolutely. We'll post it for sure down below for all our audience members. Alex, what you got there on that?
Well, I just kind of listened to that, and I like how you really went into being gracious. And I really just want to ask you, the whole time I'm sitting here thinking about it, I'm like, I want to know, can you tell our audience, just give them a little piece of value, what's a daily activity or a ritual that you're doing yourself that keeps you in this mindset, that keeps you motivated, that keeps you operating at a high level?
So I do this thing, and I came up with it years and years ago. It's about failing, and because there's the thing, as human beings, we naturally focus on failures, right? We don't remember the wins. We don't remember all the good things that might have happened this day or this week. All we can think about is, from a real estate agent standpoint, the listing they lost, the deal that fell apart. We focus on, and in life, in all things, we focus on the failures. We don't think about the 4,000 planes that take off and land good every day. We think about the one plane crash that happens each month. That was a failure. We don't pay attention to the, whatever that math is, 200,000 successes, right?
Yeah, you remember the scars.
Yeah. And so I do this thing called a daily victory log. I call it my daily victory log. And so what I do every morning is I try to read a powerful quote, right? And I read a powerful quote that kind of gets my mind going in a direction of what I want to accomplish that day. So I just keep you can keep a composition notebook next to your bedstand. For the last 5 years, that's what I've been doing. Recently, a diary, a journal. Recently, I've come up with something else to use, but you keep this diary, journal, something next to your bedstand. And so in the morning, find a powerful quote. Most people have smartphones, not that hard to find a powerful quote. Then write like your intention for the day. I don't mean like a full diary entry. I mean like take 3 minutes and just give a couple good bullet points.
A list.
Okay?
Yeah.
Just a list. And then that's it. That's all I do for the day. And then at the end of the night, I go back and I open that book. So I go back into the bedroom, right? When I'm getting ready to go to bed that night. I open up that book and I take about 5 minutes and I reflect on my day. And I reflect on all the small victories I had that day. Appointments set, appointments gone on, followed my schedule, I'm not doing this anymore, right? But did the knocks, made my dials, made my contacts, practiced my script, stuck to schedule, whatever it is, right? Big or small, I put all my, kiss my kids goodnight, was there to tuck my kids in, personal, professionally, balance. All your victories. Then when you go to sleep, check this out. Instead of worrying about all the shit that went wrong that day, right? And what do you got to do tomorrow to fix it? You go to sleep with all these good thoughts on your brain, right? And do you think you sleep better when those are the last thoughts you had coming out? Yes. Do you think you get a more restful sleep, wake up more reduced? Yes. And then you do the same thing the next day. You ever have a bad day? You open up the book and you read the last couple days, last couple weeks entries. You be gracious. You recognize all the good that's happening in your world. And you be gracious and grateful for it. And you be gracious to others who are around you who might be going through something tough right now, because you're paying attention to the wins, not the losses. So that's kind of a daily ritual that I use.
I love that you said that.
Yeah, that's killer value.
It's made my mind like already explode in the last 2 minutes just on like, what am I doing? But it's funny you said that too. So Jerry Sobolski, who I also met at Inman from North Fork up there, about an hour north of Manhattan. When we were walking through Manhattan that last night, we got into a discussion of like different things like that. Not a long discussion, but he's like, "What's one thing that you did this week that you kind of been counting or as a positive thing?" And I was like, honestly, I tried to hold open 50 doors for people like this week. You know, just a common thing that's nice to do. Especially take a Southern boy up north. We got
especially in New York, right?
Oh my God! Well, I'm walking here. Well, I'm holding doors here. So
they've never seen this kind of charm.
I know, but.
Last year, I was listening to something, but it was really kind of just a small thing, making my bed every morning.
Oh, everyone's
they talked about that at Inman. Who was that?
Get back in it. Can't get back in it. So
the general, there's a YouTube out now about it, like a Marine Corps general talking about it. A couple of people talked about it on stage. I actually heard Susan O'Malley once, years and years ago, at a convention. She used to be like Michael Jordan's boss, right? She was president of the Wizards and the Bullets. And excuse me. She had like her 7 rules of success, and rule number 1 was make her bed. Yeah. Right. And a lot of people, yeah. And there's all kinds of, like, you started your day with a win. You did something you're supposed to do as a discipline. There's all this stuff that goes with it. But sometimes we just like overcomplicate things, right?
Exactly. It's a mental reset, right?
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah, I like that.
Well, let me switch the script here just a second. One thing that, in just kind of researching you since the conference, that I thought was awesome is I'm trying to build a brand of my own, which is different from anybody else's. Okay. And when I go to your website, I see it's like you are the only Dan in the world. Like,
and interestingly enough, there were 3 Dan Smiths at my high school.
I know, but it's like, it says, "What's new with Dan? What's Dan's books? Dan's events? Let's strategize with Dan. Let's schedule Dan. Let's look at Dan's blog."
Well, damn, Dan.
Are you the only Dan in the world? Or is there a Dave out there? We're going to bring back Dan and Dave.
I try to be the only Dan. As it turns out, it is a rather common name. If you go and just check Amazon sites, there's a couple professional athletes named Dan Smith. There's a couple professional musicians. There's a guy like the biggest bow tie seller in the world. And so it's very difficult to distinguish
we got to hook him up with Nick.
Yeah, right. It's very, very difficult to distinguish a Dan Smith out there. So I've tried to, and I've branded myself because of that. Dan Smith was gone everywhere. Dan Smith was gone like in 1981 or something, right? Like on the internet. So I've branded myself as the by Dan, right? Like the author, because Dan Smith is gone. But you got to identify your brand. You got to identify your uniqueness. Mine's an author, right? So I can say by BY. By Dan is my license plates. By Dan. And everything on every social media account is by Dan Smith this, by Dan Smith that, on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and the website. So I've had to like find that brand with potentially the only less common name out there would be John Smith. Like, I think it's the second most common name in the United States. And so it is a difficult brand to get people to recognize. So that's been a struggle of mine, but I've really worked hard at it.
Yeah, dude, you did an excellent job. Yeah, it's how I looked up your website, and then I was like, oh, well, I want to YouTube him. I literally put in Dan Smith, and a bunch of shit pulled up, and I was like, let's try by Dan Smith, and
there
boom,
you go.
there you were.
There it is.
I was like, it worked.
Different.
It worked.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
Well, it pulls that. So.
Yeah.
Well, hey, a lot of Dan Smith out there. Bennett, you guys are lucky. Bennett, come on. A cup. And you guys all day long. Yeah, there you go. I like it. So hopefully I've provided good ideas and good content for your viewers here today.
Absolutely. I mean, the biggest thing for me is like we started, the connecting point. All right, you spoke to me without even face to face. All right, I grasped onto the concepts that you were throwing out at the conference. That turned into a smaller, more defined conversation, which is what I like. One tactic that I would just suggest to people who do go to conferences and are sitting there listening to people on stage, this is my little trick for the conferences. Send them a direct Facebook message to not everybody, just the people that directly hit home with you, and say, hey, I'd love to just ask you a question afterwards. What's the first thing they do when they get off stage? Boom, they look at their phone. I can't tell you how many times that's worked and got me just that 30-second conversation right after somebody gets off stage.
That's a great idea.
I mean, it's just simple. And I can't tell you how many people I've connected with that way. So I'd really urge people to do that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Everybody wait, if you would, wait like 60 seconds so that Bennett and I can have the first text messages on their phones. Then you guys can go right after that.
Well, hey, speaking of that, we're gonna wrap this thing up. And Dan, the content today is just on point. Just absolutely on point. We really appreciate the value and what you've really offered to our viewers. And if anybody has any questions or wants to reach out to you, I'd love for you to plug yourself, plug where they can find you on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. They call you, email you, or where they can buy your book by Dan Smith.
All right. So buydansmith.com, B-Y. Although for the illiterate, I've also locked up the B-U-Y. But buydansmith.com. And on Twitter and on Instagram and on LinkedIn, every place, by Dan Smith, you're going to find me. And in the digital world, on Amazon, you can just type in Dan Smith or Failing Greatly. If you go to books, it's pretty much going to be me and like one fiction writer, so it gets narrowed down. There's still a #1 best-selling fiction writer who's written like 87 books named Dan Smith. So I do have 3 books on Amazon now. I have Failing Greatly. I have and a couple planners and things that are out there. So if you go to Amazon, you can find me. If you go to Inman, when I'm reading my stories, you can go to Inman and do a search for Dan Smith and find me. And if you guys ever have any questions, want to talk to me, ever need a speaker, I know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy. I'd be happy to talk with you about that.
That's awesome, man. Hey, I just wanted to
email Dan at buydansmith.com.
And we'll post all that stuff below so you guys can just have a one-click link right to them. But again, I just want to thank you for coming out and just being on this with us. But more importantly, just being who you are and connecting, especially with people like me at these conferences. It means so much to me just to say, hey, I know this guy, I know that guy. And
it's my pleasure, man.
that makes me just so much better because I grow through everybody else. So
speaking of, I just started a Facebook group. I forgot to mention, like literally started it 3 days ago, and it's called Failing Greatly Daily Lessons. So if anybody wants to join, Failing Greatly Daily Lessons, it's just a group, private group, and basically what we're all doing is we're like, here's how I failed today, and here's what I learned from it. It's not a public group, so like the general public can't see all your failures. You don't got to pull your pants down in front of everybody. But the people in the group can see it, and we're kind of sharing, here's where I failed, here's what I learned. And it's been a good interactive forum. We've just kicked it off, maybe 50, 60 members in a couple of days. But if anybody's interested, just hit the join group, and I'll let you into it too. We're not like, there's no rules for getting in. You're not allowed to go in there and plug business. It's only about talking about your failures and what you're learning.
Right. We'll leave all those in the show notes. We appreciate it. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for plugging into Connecting B2C. We've had Dan Smith on here who's really brought us some great content. And cannot wait to get you back on the show. I'm sure there's so many things we'd love to ask you, but we're going to have to hold off and let everybody wait a little bit. So thank you so much, Dan. Thank you, Bennett, for hosting, and we will see you guys later.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, guys.